Hi, hello to everyone.
Hello, hello.
It's Tamara. Okay, so some of you know that at the moment I'm not really in the position to open my camera. So I will be talking like this, and I'm sorry for that. I would like to thank you all for being here and supporting ETNOFILm, and especially to Rafa and to Jorijn. For being here on time, but we expect also Alexander, who is doing his job, and I assume that it is really difficult for all of us to be present in so many events and so many online activities. On one side, it is really helpful to be able to meet and to join different events all over the world, but on the other side, it is really stressful and difficult to be present everywhere. So I would like just to give a brief context of this talk. ETNOFILm Festival is organized since 2009 by the Ethnographic Museum of Istria. And it was always, the aim of the festival was really to work on the dialogue between people and between cultures, of course. And in the last years, aware of the emergencies, living heritage, but also the everyday life of people, the burden that is present all over, we decided to dedicate three editions of the festival to different topics that we thought were relevant. So the first year, this year, it is about climate change. And it was rather difficult to find films that could tackle the issue of living heritage and climate change, because the relationship between the two contexts is all over the place, but they are not really articulated through these concepts. So I believe that our festival, but also the work of Rafa and of the other filmmakers, are really here to help and to raise awareness of on the difficulties and the emergencies. So now I would like to thank once again Jorijn for moderating this session. Again, Rafa for taking the time, for accepting our invitation to show his films, to show his film. And I would now like to give the floor to Jorijn. And of course, invite all of you later to join with questions and to have a nice dialogue, a nice conversation in the next 45 minutes, hopefully. So I believe also Alexander will join. But now, sorry, I have another thing to say. David Muniz, the author of the third film, Beyond the Glacier, is not present today. He couldn't join us, but he has sent a nice message for us. So I would like to ask Ivana if she can play his message.
Hello, I'm David Rodriguez, the director of Beyond the Glacier from Spain. I want to thank the festival and the organization for including our documentary in this program. I regret not being able to accompany you, but due to the situation that we are now, it's impossible. I hope you enjoyed this movie, filmed in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, that talks about the looming water conflicts facing our planet. Bala Isibio, ETNOFILm Robini.
I would like to welcome once again Jorijn and start the discussion with Rafa. Thank you, Rafa.
Hello, good afternoon to all, at least afternoon here in Europe. As Tamara introduced already, one of the pleasures of this period is that we are very well connected throughout the world through this COVID crisis, and often you're even talking to people without knowing very well where they live or where they are. At the same time, like Rafa now, I have no idea where you will be talking from, but I'm happy to meet you. And I would when we wait also for Alexander, because it's, of course, it would be nice to have the exchange, but let's start already with listening to your story and inputs regarding the several questions, and maybe later on in this hour we will have the opportunity to exchange also among the different authors. And I would be very happy to start by asking, when you received this question of the ETNOFILm Festival on the topic of this year, which is living heritage in emergency context, and then specifically zooming in into the topic of climate change, how did it relate to your own trajectory, to the things you are trying to process in your film trajectory and work? And how do you relate to the subject? What was going through your mind? Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for the invitation. For us, it was really a pleasure to have this opportunity, not only to have the film screen on ETNOFILm, but also to talk. And Jorijn, you just mentioned something that for us was really important since the beginning. I got in contact with that reality in 2009, and I was really fascinated by, at first, by the way that those people lived in such harmony with the environment and all that, and at the same time they had all these peculiar cultural traces that we were not aware. Even being a Brazilian, I live in São Paulo in Brazil, a big city. So, but I'm really connected to nature and nature and documentaries and everything, and I got really fascinated by telling that story, and I invited the community. Can I start trying to do a documentary here? And once they allowed the access and everything, and I started talking to the crew, and I said, I think this is an opportunity that we have to talk about something that people don't talk a lot about, the rainforest here in Brazil. You see a lot of news on deforestation, you see a lot of documentaries on wild nature, but we don't talk a lot about the people there, you know. And I was really fascinated by that, you know. I said, I'm not like really concerned if we have like a jaguar image on the film, even though it's in the rainforest, because I think that somehow that's the obvious perspective that we usually talk about, you know. So I was really interested in showing how people who lives there, how they live, you know, what's their daily lives, what's their challenges, their struggles, the things that make them happy, what they're seeking for in life, you know, what and that's what we were really aiming to shoot, and the film respected that somehow, I think. Hopefully you guys agree with me. But I think it respects the camera. It's really close to the people. It's really intimate, I think, but at the same time, it doesn't have tried to control the environment that we're shooting. We just let it reveal what they are, what they want to tell us, even though we talk, of course, with them while we're shooting, but we try to respect that and not having like a formal moment that you have people being interviewed and they will feel themselves in an interview, and that would not help us having this organic way to live with the forest, with their environment, with all the threats that they still have there, and at the same time, I think that as a documentary filmmaker, I think that this is really important to see, because they're really isolated somehow, you know. They're far away from our realities, we are far away from their realities, but at the same time they are protecting something that it's good for us too, you know. So I think that we should know them, we should know how they live, we should know and maybe get identified with something and try to change your own reality somehow in your microcosmos, and maybe we can scale that mentality of living in harmony with nature, with their environment, respecting nature, and understanding that we're part of nature, not apart from nature. And I think they're really close to this concept. So I wanted to have this story because I think it's really inspiring. So I wanted to reach a big audience, and that's what moved us. And when you got invitation to be on an ETNOFILm, I think somehow our aim has to do with ethnography and all that, because we want to show them as they are, not like trying to build a speech out of them. And I don't know, I was really honored, you know. It's really a pleasure. So because that drove me since the beginning, you know.
Given that the people and the cultures in your film, but also in the film of Alexander, are very outspoken on their relations and the knowledge with the environment on the one hand, and then with the external and often also invasive powers on the other hand. How, as an author, as a filmmaker, did you relate to this process of filming coming from outside? How did you relate to the people that were involved, but also to this knowledge, the practices, this living heritage that was involved?
Well, I was really into it, you know. We spent a lot of time with all of the characters. If you go to the time we spent there, we spent around 120 days on set, on field, you know. And when we were starting to plan production, we decided that, you know, we said, oh, we have this money, how we're going to spend it? Will it take like a big crew and less shooting flights and stay less time there and try to be objective, or should we just let time to the stories reveal? We build this connection with people. There was a challenge too, because when you go to people who lives out of the forest, they must respect the time of nature, you know. So for instance, the Brazilian nuts, they can only harvest that on January or March, you know, from January to March. The acai, the little purple fruit, they only can harvest it from July to September. So if I want to show that the timeline of how you live out of the forest, I needed to respect that, you know. So we decided to go with a really small crew, but spend as much time as possible. And we ended up staying 120 days in 5 different trips that we did there, and that changed my life, you know, like as a human being, and because I really got connected to those realities. I consider some of the characters like part of my family today somehow. I keep in touch with them because it was really intense, you know. We spent a lot of time in places that we couldn't get connected to anyone, just us, you know. And there's nothing around us, just the forest, nature, animals living around us. We slept in hammocks during the night in the forest. So I mean, it was really an immersion, and that impacted me a lot, you know. I don't know if I got your point, but that changed me completely, you know. At first I was there inspired by a naive way to see them. Oh, they love nature and they live really in a harmony way. And then I started to research like Chico Mendes, because I just had a childhood memory out of it. And I met Nilson, one of the characters, which is Chico's cousin. I met him in 2009, and I remember Chico when he was murdered as a kid, and I started to research, and I understood a lot of the political layers out of the story too. And at the same time, I didn't want to do a political film in the beginning, because I wanted to focus on the people and more in showing how they live out of it, their values, their culture, how the peculiar things that they learn out of the forest, and their way to see the world as like a spiritual side of it too, you know. And then I understood that I couldn't escape the politics side of it, and it's also important for all of them. Like you see the natives, they're really engaged in indigenous rights here in Brazil. You see the rubber tappers, they're still fighting for their right to live out of the forest, because the forest doesn't belong to them. It belongs to Brazil, to the Union. So it's really like, it has a lot of politics too, you know. And so we started to try to put all these different perspectives together. And as I said first, we had this naive instinct of just showing the way they love the forest and how beautiful, like the indigenous people still manage to live with the forest, or the rubber tappers. And then at some point, as we're so into it, we said, man, but to show this value, this precious side of it, we need somehow to show the conflict, the destruction, the illegal occupation of the reserves and all that. And then we started to get close to the environmental police to try to show also this other perspective, which gets to the point that you said, the outside pressure, you know. And I understood that I could be also somehow an outside pressure. So, and usually that's how we deal with nature, you know, we just occupy it, destroy it, and put farm on it, or whatever. And sometimes the things you buy in the city can impact that somehow, you know. So I started to change my life politically completely. My kids' lives are completely changed too because of that. And I understood this film ended up making me also an environmental activist somehow, and human rights activist, due to the impact of the life experience that I had during the shootings, you know.
You answered already my next question also, but maybe I will first go into an aspect of what you've talked about just now. Did it also impact your way of, or the reflection about how you would visualize? What you have been showing is very much that it's precious, the value that's therein. But did it raise some reflection on what can I show, what can I not show, and in which way can I, as a filmmaker, deal with the knowledge, practices that these cultures have been developing for centuries? Did it do something on that level also with you as a filmmaker?
Yes, definitely. We went to the native indigenous ceremonies, the ritual ayahuasca ceremonies and all that. And of course, like as I was there, after we shot everything, I allowed myself also to go through this kind of experience to understand, actually to try to understand how they get to that stage of spirituality with the forest, and try to translate that somehow in the film, you know. I don't know if you get to the film in the sound layer of the film. We really worked that hard, you know. We spend almost the same time we spend with the image editing. We spend on sound editing, because once you get to the forest, there's something that's really, really beautiful for the eyes at first, and it is really beautiful, but the sound, it's really powerful, you know. When you're like at night, in the morning, in a ritual, in hunting, or when you're like in the farms that are destroying the reserves, the soundscape's completely different. Like for instance, when you're with the environmental police, you can hear the boots of the policemen stepping on the grass, you know. And this is a strong noise when you're there. And when you go to the forest, you don't have that sound. It's another layer, and you hear the birds, and you hear other sound, and so we really try to stress that out, trying to get the audience close to what we felt when we're there, because as we're experiencing that scenario, you got really sensitive to the visuals and the audio of that place. I remember that I spent, like, for instance, 30 days in the forest, and then we went back to the city, and the city was annoying, and it was annoying because of the sound, you know. So when you go to the Rubber Tappers Union election, you can hear that it's really noisy too, because the city is noisy, you know. And we try to build those layers, trying to create these emotional moods that we felt while we were on those realities, you know. And at some point too, as we got to this spiritual how can I say, experiences, and for instance, and I was talking with an indigenous guy that also gave us an insight to the film, so I just want to share. And it's really simple, and at the same point it's really profound. We were talking, having breakfast, so unfortunately I don't have that on the cameras, but one of the guys of the crew that we were there, we were talking about the jaguar stories, and the indigenous guy was telling me that how many times he faced a jaguar in the forest and all that. And the guy that was with us said, "But aren't you afraid of the jaguar?" And the guy said, "What? Afraid of the jaguar? How could I be afraid of myself? I am the jaguar. The jaguar is me. I am the forest. The forest me. How am I gonna be afraid of myself?" And that was really powerful. It was like, boom, you know, whoa. That's a way that if you see yourself in life with that perception, you change completely your habits, the way you see the world, the way you treat people, the way you treat nature, the trash and everything, and at the same time, it's a sentence that shows how connected they are to their environment. They're really symbiosis, and that triggers us to bring the mapping projections of Chico Mendes' archive, because we had that footage and it was really lousy quality because it was from the 80s, and we were shooting in 4K with like modern cameras, and we said how we're going to integrate those images because they never looked good. So we had that idea of projecting them in the forest and shooting that projection, so it will be more aesthetical experience more than having an archive. And at the same time, it was an aesthetics experience that connects to this concept of being part of nature, being integrated of nature. You're like really connected for real. The image is connected to the trees there, to the tree leaves, when you project Chico, and it's a metaphor of his omnipresence on that place. And at the same time, it's a metaphor of this sentence that this native guy brought to us, and it was really powerful while we were living there. It was one of the things that triggers your mind to another place.
You already mentioned that it made you kind of activists living the whole process. Now that you have experienced that the viability of these cultures is so related to the natural environment, and it's actually impossible without a healthy connection with the natural environment, do you think it would be possible to make a film without this political or activist dimension?
Actually, I think I talked while we were researching. We talked with a journalist here in Brazil that was really close to Chico when Chico was alive and everything, and he told me something also that was really powerful. He said, "Man, there is no way to talk about the rainforest without being like a political speech. You can be as poetic as possible, but when you get to the rainforest, there is an agenda already in the world that you cannot ignore. That you would be political somehow you will be, and that also, I think he's right somehow. I don't know if we can escape that, and especially today that we have in our local government here, we have a really odd way to deal with the rainforest, and we have the international pressure going on, of course, which I agree with international pressure in this point, pressuring our government to deal with rainforests in a different way. And once the film shows people who are living in the forest that the government is not protecting, it is political to people who want to protect it and to pressure legislation here, the laws and everything. It is a tool of pressure, because it shows the value of that place too. It doesn't only show that there are trees there. No, there are people who lives out of those trees. There are people, and they take care of those trees for us, to keep having rain for agriculture here in Brazil, for instance. Agriculture in Brazil, only 10% of agriculture here has irrigating system. The rest is based on rains. So if you don't have the forest, you don't have rains, you don't have agriculture, the country will collapse economically. So there's no way to escape politics, I think. And as I mentioned before, when I started this film, I wasn't so into the politics and to that, and the film drove me to that. I understood that it is important and there's no way to escape. It's actually the only way to try to keep it safe, try to keep it preserved, try to keep it for the next generations.
And in this age of climate change and living all of us in actually a fragile context globally, did you see with the people, the cultures you met, a consciousness that actually maybe they are bearing a way of life, a way of understanding environment that could be valuable more largely for humanity as a source of a healthier future of going about with the environment?
Yes, there's something that we really was fascinated about too, is the way that they relate not only to nature, but when you get to that, you go to a philosophical way to deal with life as a whole, because since you understand yourself as equal of everything, like as equal as a jaguar, as equal as a bee, as equal as a tree, and as equal as the other people, that changes everything completely. I was really in love with the way they deal with life. They're not like really ambitious, now that we're going through the pandemics and we see that we need each other as much as possible to go through hard moments, and these guys, even from the rubber tappers to the native indigenous people, they live in a really community sense that it should be an example. We should be inspired by it. For instance, there's the hunting sequence on the film. That they hunt an animal that they eat, because that place we were, for instance, we were like a 8-hour walk and 5-hour car drive from the next city, for the closest city. We're really far away, so they didn't even have a refrigerator. They don't have electricity there. It's really, really different way of living, and they go out of the forest to go after meat, and they hunted this deer, a huge deer, and the family there had 5 people, 3 kids and a couple, and they cut all the animal and they kept in different parts, and they kept a part for them, divided in 5 other plastic bags, and took it to the neighbors, and they even used that as a verb. They said, oh, now I'm gonna neighbor the deer, and this is something that I don't know how you guys live there in Europe, but here in São Paulo, for instance, we don't know a lot of our neighbors, and for them, neighbor became even a verb, such as the connection and the sense of community of being together, and when you go to these guys are the rubber tappers, they're extractivists. They, as I said before, they don't own the land, and they don't want to own the land, because they don't have this relation of property. They just want to stay there because that forest gives them meat, gives them fruits from them to sell to the city, gives them Brazilian nuts to have him build his house, buy a motorbike, buy a car, because they can earn a lot of money because they don't spend a lot of money. The forest gives them a lot. They have water from the clear water of the stream that they have near their houses. I mean, they just want to enjoy that environment. They don't want to possess it, and I think this is really beautiful. It changes also your mentality. What do I need so much, and what do I want so much, and what do I want for what specifically? If you live in the city and you hunt a deer, you cut it and you divide it and you put it in your freezer and you eat it in 6 months. You don't neighbor that, it's a different way to deal with it, and I think this should be really an inspiration for human as a whole in the world. I think it's a way to deal with more kindness to the other, more generosity to the other. The other being a human or a tree or an animal or a water. Like just to finish the thinking here. There's another story that the Nilson Chico Mendes' cousin, he lives in a hut really in the forest, and so a lot of times it was really hot there, really humid, so we were always sweating. And when you took showers there, it was like paradise. It was cold water from the river, and it was like paradise. And every time like I took shower, I really felt good. And sometimes I mentioned to him, I said, man, this shower was amazing. Wow, so good. I feel alive again. And he said, well, this is because you're taking shower with a water that is alive. In the city, the water is already dead. It goes to all the chemicals and all. So the showers in the city, it's dead water. Here is the water is alive. And I mean, this conception of the water is alive, that the water, and he respects that because it's alive. I think we should take that for life. This concept of dealing with it. It's really respectful and wise, I think. I don't know.
Next to this deeper insight and really feeling the wisdom of living with an environment, your film and also the film of Alexander gave really a broader vision of the risk that climate change has to this living heritage and the people, and showing the dynamics between the indigenous cultures and the governments or the economic interests that keep broadening the imbalances leading to higher temperatures globally and the many disastrous impacts. Where do you think as a filmmaker the relevance of showing this power tensions and the power relations is?
I think it's essential. Actually, right now, I'm working on another project that tries to put this really face to face, you know, because we finished shooting Forest People in December 2018, like right before our Bolsonaro president got in charge, you know. And since then, things just got more conflictors, you know. It's really, really bad. And now we are like working on a project that has to show an indigenous woman native leadership that is gathering 18 different shamans to gather all the spiritual and powerful plants that they know and create sort of a big catalog, because all of that is transmitted orally. And if the forest is gone, these people will be gone and this knowledge will be gone. So she's working, trying to do that. And at the same time, the village that she lives deals all the time with illegally logging. People invade the forest and try to extract the wood from there. And they sometimes even get gun conflicts with them. It's really, really bad. So we want to show how progress is smashing traditional knowledge, and we should respect traditional knowledge, recognize it, and let those people live in their environment, live in the forest, and keep that preserved. Because I don't know, we Europeans preserve their culture. The white Brazilian people try to preserve the culture that emerged here out of immigration, and we should let them also preserve their culture and their way of living, you know.
Maybe we can open the floor to the people that joined the conversation. Does any one of the colleagues in the room here has a question for Rafa? No one with a question? Is there something, Rafa, that you really want to share from your own side after maybe seeing also the films of the colleagues, or when you knew that you would have this meeting room with people that have been following the films?
Yeah. There's two things that I think I want to mention quickly. One is that one thing that really got me a little bit sad somehow is that when you see the film and you have like Chico talking about the past 30 years ago, and we see a lot of people, a lot of things that are happening today, they're almost the same, you know. There's not much change, you know. The conflicts are the same, the pressure is still the same, and I felt that we were going into cycles only, you know, and this is bad, you know. So I just want to get people attention, whoever watched the film, to try to relate that, you know, this timeline of 30 years when Chico brings, and then we go to present time and how they connect and how the dialogue still, how what Chico said 30 years ago, it really fits nowadays too. And so we need to move, you know, because nothing changed a lot. A lot of things that he said hopefully could be in the past, you know, but it's not still. It's still a fight to go, you know. And the last thing is that talking to the rubber tappers once too, one of them, I asked him if he thought Chico was more of an environmentalist or more as a politician at the end of his life. And he said, this is an interesting question. You know, I think Chico was he was not a environmentalist and he was not a politician. You know, he was just intelligent. You know, and I think that was really really cool to hear. Like, so it's really simple. Because he said, if you think a little bit, just a little bit, you see that you shouldn't cut all the forest down. You know, and I think like those people there, they have this gift of being simple and precise, you know, and that's a lesson of life for all of us, I think. And well, I think that was it. I would just like to thank you everyone for being here and listening to to my perspective here. I understand that this film is much bigger than me, you know. It's a story that crossed my life path, and I felt responsible to bring it to a wider audience. So having the film being screened with you guys for us is like, it's really, really valuable, because that's the mission, to have the film being watched for as much people as possible. It never had to do about financial results. This one, I leave out of other things, you know. This one was really like a life mission, and for me it's really special to have the opportunity to talk to people and bring this perspective from what we live there, and try to show how important it is for all of us. As long as you can, wherever you be, just take care of what you can, because it's important for our species as a whole, you know. It's not just about the planet, it's about ourselves. So thanks a lot.
Well, I think we are grateful to you to have been able to learn from what you have learned. One way of going about with these subjects, and which is kind of network growing globally, is this idea of intangible cultural heritage and how we can safeguard this throughout various domains, but surely also the way we go about with the environment, and the wisdom about nature, and so on. Was this concept of intangible cultural heritage, was it new for you? Or did you have already any link to the?
No, it was completely new, but somehow it organizes something that I felt, you know, but I just didn't have words to translate it. So it was new to me, but I think I completely I are aware of it. I felt aware of it in the past, you know, just didn't know how to put it in words.
And is it a concept that helps you framing now, sort of the things you were working around?
Yeah, I think yes, because I don't know. I think when you talk about culture, we understand that diversity is the key, you know, and diversity also is intangible, like it has no limits, you know. So I think that I always try to do that whatever I shoot, even though I'm shooting a TV show. I really try to respect whoever is in front of the camera, and trying to give them their voice, and not try to put what I believe in their voice, you know, and trying to reach that portray of intangible culture, intangible diversity, intangible, because I think this will move us forward. We need to respect everyone, because richness just will make, like a richness of culture would just make us richer, you know, as society, as mankind and all that. So I think it's maybe one of the things that I find really important in my work as a whole, you know, in my career since the beginning, actually. But as I'm getting older and getting involved with more precise topics that I want to approach, this really is aligned with what I'm seeking. You know?
Yes, I often say that, like, we have this idea of ecological diversity, which is very crucial for the future of our planet. Actually, the cultural diversity and the way we go about with it is as crucial. I see that Tamara would also like to ask something to you. Tamara, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt your conversation. It is really beautiful, and I think you're a natural, Rafa, for our work as well, in terms of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. Because, as you said, it is something that comes natural. The concept is maybe, you know, something that most people are not really familiar with, but it really means life. It means culture. So I'm really grateful for this talk. The thing that I wanted to ask is about the transmission of this knowledge to younger generations. So on one side, how can film, or is it common in Brazil that film is used at school maybe, or in other non-formal occasions, as a tool to promote cultural diversity, biodiversity, or the risks on climate change? And how do you see the role of film in education, maybe?
Well, that's something really cool that you asked. The film, it has this mission. We understand that this film specifically has this mission somehow. So we do have a strategy of what we call here would be like a social diffusion of the film. So right now, this is starting to happen right now, but we're connecting with colleges, public schools here around Brazil to have the film screened, and then whenever possible, I will be on a Q&A, but whenever no, at least the teacher can use it as a tool to promote a debate on classes and everything. And this week, it happened in Manaus, the Federal University of Manaus, UFAM. They are screening the film for the anthropological studies classes there, and they will discuss the film afterwards. We also we have this film screened in Chapuri, where the community of rubber tappers lives, and they're in the film, so people could see it. We have it screened in a youth rainforest social fight leadership committee that they have for young leaders in the rainforest. They watched the film too, and they had a leadership activity afterwards inspired by the film, and so they can discuss their role as a leader in their reality nowadays. So we're really engaged with that, and trying to have the film to reach this audience and try to be a trigger to arise consciousness about it, And just to finish, we also had the film. We organized it with Chico Mendes Committee, which is led by Chico Mendes' daughter and granddaughter nowadays. They lead a team of young people who are engaged of preserving Chico Mendes' legacy alive. And Chico, before he died, he left a letter addressed to the youth from the future, and where he called us to fight for a green revolution that will make the world better, and that should start it in September this year. It should be the day one as he dreamed, and we organized a big live event, 6 hours of panels, and then we screened the film, and then we had a digital party too to celebrate day one of this green revolution, and trying to also get young people engaged with the cause,
Great, thank you for your answer. I would just I think we have a few more minutes because Alexander also didn't join it, unfortunately, but I think that sorry.
Just joining right now.
Oh, he's joining. Okay, great. So I just wanted to ask Rafa about you said you're trying to have this ethical approach in filmmaking, and we can all feel that. And the principles that you shared with us, it is something that is also embedded in the Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. But on a film, as a filmmaker, for our colleagues that are visual anthropologists, do you have any tips on how to go about it, how to work really ethically when you have your schedule and maybe you don't have enough finances to stay for 120 days and you want to show the film something, or there are a lot of problems, a lot of issues that you face during the filmmaking. So is there any tip that you can give us to keep it ethical and really represent or present people as they really feel?
Yeah, well, that's something that you mentioned that nobody ever questioned me before about it, but it's something that I really had a reflection on it, how I deal with my characters. And I do have a lot of strategies on that, trying to build this ethical relation, For instance, we never stayed in a hotel while we were in production. We always stayed in their houses, sleeping in hammocks like they do, and they're really glad to receive us. And we also brought food, we brought food as a contribution for being there. So and we cooked everything with them all the time. We really engaged ourselves in their daily lives. And for instance, in the first day, I don't shoot a lot. I just talk, even though they know that we're there to shoot. And by the end of the day, I started grabbing the camera and I tried to shoot them, like doing anything, like nothing important, like for instance, the woman's gonna take out the trash. I shoot that, And she says, why are you shooting that? Like, and I just shoot that just to start breaking the ice, to create this ethical bond. I'm shooting whatever you are living, I'm not controlling anything here. If you're grabbing the trash and taking it out, I can shoot it. It's cool, just do whatever you want to do. Because for me, I think the challenge is to keep the camera barrier, because when you don't have the camera and you're traveling, for instance, as a tourist, you become friends with people and they show their houses sometimes. Like, you have really special moments in a really magic trip that you had. And I try to bring that connection that sometimes you do when you don't have the camera. You're just in a different reality that that you're not from there. They know they're not from there. They know that they're from there. So I'm saying, just show me your word, And I start and then I start shooting stupid things like taking out the trash, cutting an orange, and then once I put the camera in that level of banality, whenever I raise the camera to shoot whatever I really think it's important, they don't get, oh no, the camera is on, they just keep talking, whatever, they just keep doing whatever they're doing. I just break the barrier of now we're recording the film. No, they never knew what would be in the film, and we shot a lot of things, and a lot of things that didn't work, a lot of things that were used just for that, just for them understand that the camera shouldn't be something that they should be worried about. I just raised the camera because I thought it was funny. I thought it was curious. Sometimes I shot something that it wasn't for the film, but late at night I said, hey, come here, look at what we did today. Look at that. And something was funny for them and they laughed. And so the camera became also part of our universe as director and characters. It's one more friend, one more partner. So they don't get worried about representing something for the camera, because the camera no longer means anything for that reality in such way, so this might be one of the tips that I do. I start shooting things that are randomly, like random wise, so they get confused at first, but then they just don't care anymore, because they trust me. I'll be ethical with them. I won't put them in trouble, because we have a true relationship. And at the same time, the camera is not important anymore, And another thing that I never do is try to repeat what they told me, If I wasn't with the camera on or whatever, sometimes I find the framing, and then I just ask, oh, what did you say? I didn't listen, Like I pretend that I couldn't get it, but I don't say, oh, say that again for me, please. I never say that. I never. If I want them to repeat, of course they repeat in a different way, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but I don't put them in the mode that they're giving an interview. We're chatting, we're having a conversation. That's really something that I have in an obsessive way on field, because I really think that this helps people bring their true, and my role as a documentarist is to bring their truth, the truth of that reality, whatever arises there. If you watch the film, it's easy to show that on the natives, for instance. But what I think it's really cool is when you see the invaders, of the reserve, the people who are cutting trees illegally, they're completely free in the camera, even though sometimes they're talking stuff that will put them in trouble, but they trust that's them, they trusted the camera. Whenever I was there, the camera, they kept talking to the camera. They didn't care, because of this relation of the camera doesn't mean anything, you shoot everything at the same time, you can shoot nothing, so these are probably some stuff that I really worried when I'm approaching characters with the camera, to don't build that, that acting position that people are just worried about talking and they don't show themselves in their real way,
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jorijn, please.
Sorry, Tamara. Thank you for sharing this. Actually, you provided us a wonderful bridge to Alexander, because in the very opening of the film of Alexander, who has joined us, can you open your camera, Alexander? This kind of reflexivity on the presence of the camera is also very clear. It's being presented also to the people who watch, actually. And maybe now we can start to talk also with Alexander in the group. Can you open your video. Alexander, do you hear us? You're still muted.
Now, can you hear me now?
We do.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. And can you open the camera?
I am trying to figure it out. I have to use my telephone right now, so I'm a bit lost here.
Difficult, we do it just this way.
I'm trying to see here how to do this, but I've never used Zoom before on the. Let's try this. I think here it should work.
Yes, there you are.
Hello.
Hi. Now we can imagine again where you are in the world. Are
You
you
can guess.
Berlin, maybe?
No, I'm in Madrid.
Madrid. I couldn't see.
Yes. It's hard to tell. Cities nowadays, they look all the same,
Yeah.
almost.
We're happy that you can join us for a few more minutes. We had an extensive talk with Rafa on a large set of questions, but I don't think we will have the opportunity to go into the same depths anymore as you're a bit late now. But maybe we can just open the floor to you and have the more general question when the ETNOFILm Festival approached you with this specific subject of the festival this year, zooming in into on the one hand ethnographic filmmaking and on the other hand the link of emergencies in which living heritage and tangible cultural heritage relating to climate change is set. How does this relate to your work, to your trajectory as a filmmaker and the things you want to do? And maybe you had the opportunity to watch the other films of the colleagues. Was this concept of living heritage, was it new to your work? Yes, just go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for the invitation of this talk, and I'm deeply sorry I couldn't make it earlier, but I'm preparing right now a shooting in Colombia for the next documentary, and I'm here in Madrid seeing if I can travel or not, and so this has been very complicated the last days, so everything got a little bit out of organization, but yeah, it has been a while now that I've been shooting Thinking Like a Mountain. So I have to go a little bit back in memories. But actually the initial point for me to do this work had a very clear relation, I think, with the idea of exploring climate change from different points of view. So when I first came to Colombia and I lived in Cartagena, which is about 3 hours from the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, my first interest to go there was actually to find out how the impact of the climate change is seen, experienced, interpreted by an indigenous community. So this mountain, it's the highest coastal mountain in the world, and it's very affected by climate change because of the closeness to the equator. So it's almost 6,000 meters high. And at this height above sea level, everywhere else in the world, there's a lot of snow and ice. And as closer you get to the equator, there's less because this impact of the sun is very strong. And then I think this was for me the first question to approach this mountain. And as soon as I went there, I found out that it's an indigenous reserve, which I didn't know before. And then I wanted to meet some of the people to start researching or start raising those questions. And very soon I met one of the indigenous leaders, and yeah, I kind of sensed that there's two answers maybe to that question. One is for them looking into the landscape and realizing since more than 30 years already that the landscape is changing and that the land is changing. And then on the other side, there's also a look which is more introspective, and for them as a community, believing that if there's something changing in the land and in the landscape they are so related to and so close with, that then there has to be this change out there in the world has to do with their habitats and with their culture and with their way of protecting this mountain. So it was kind of my question had maybe two answers or two ways of looking at it. And then this was for me, I think, the moment I really decided that I should make a documentary on this subject. And then the way I like to do films is very freely, I think, in the way that I always write a script, of course, you have to do that in order to find some foundings, some financial background to make a film. But then once I start shooting, then I try to forget about what I have written before and really take the filmmaking as the process where things happen. And yeah, I think it was a very particular way of working on a film in the Sierra Nevada, because they distrust in a big way white people's interest for a good reason. And so I think I spent a lot of time in the mountains with them, and I spent very little time shooting, actually. And also for two reasons. One was logistic reasons, because there is no electricity. So we had to supply all ourselves with solar panels, like little solar panels. And we were there for more than 2 months, walking through the mountains on foot and taking the equipment with us. And all we had was the solar panels. So if there was not much sunlight, we just couldn't shoot, or we had to shoot very little. And we never had the chance to look into the material. So it was a little bit like shooting in the old days with film material, where you couldn't see what you shot. And we copied only the essential material on hard disks to be able to keep filming. And then on the other side, a second reason for us to not shoot that much was because we spent a lot of time living with them and spending time together and doing whatever had to be done, getting firewood or cooking together, and finding out why we were there and what we wanted to do together in these communities. So this was actually the method once we were in the mountain of shooting. We went to a village and then we stayed there for a while, and we tried to find out with the community what was the purpose of our visit and what were we able to shoot with them. Because the idea of this documentary was never to kind of reveal the secrets of a culture that has been very reserved to open their secrets, no? And this is also why the film in the end finishes with saying that it's not about taking all that knowledge out of this place and sucking it out and extracting it like in a mining industry operation, or what the whole colonial idea was about, no? To take things out. I mean, you always do, because we go and we take images and we take those images. So it's always, it never turns totally away from a colonial operation, but we try to make this as little as possible, no? And the knowledge they wanted to preserve just there and not showing it to the camera and not making it part of the film, we always try to find out where that place was, and then we didn't film. And we didn't film some rituals or whatever they did for that very same reason.
Your film was indeed very reflexive in that aspect, showing throughout the whole film several moments that actually you consciously will not show things. On the other hand, it's a very activist film, you could say. I don't know if you like this, the way of being framed like this, but do you think you could work around a subject like you've done without making an activist approach?
That's a good question. I mean, probably there's, for many of us documentary filmmakers, a little bit of the question always left, should I do more? Or I will maybe an impulse of wanting to do more than with the people that we work with, no? Because we always go into this kind of deeper relationships, just spending so much time and and also emotional, strong moments together. And yeah, we still have an active connection with Chikame, for example, the guy that took me through the mountains, and other Arhuaco leaders. I'm still having a good relation to, and I would love, and I think this is a mutual thing, to take it on from here. And there was a good moment when we first showed the film in Colombia at the film festival in Cartagena de Indias. We had the possibility to finally have a moment where the film is in a festival and 10 people came, 10 Arhuaco women and men came from the Sierra Nevada, and we had this one screening where they were there and the cinema was full of international audience and Colombian people sitting there watching the film. And it was very late at night. I think it started at 11 and finished at 1 in the morning. And nobody left the room, the cinema, after the finishing of the film, which was really stunning to me, because this almost never happens. No, people then in a festival kind of environment, they leave and they go home or see another film, and everybody stayed because they were so interested in speaking directly to them, to ask their questions. And in the Sierra Nevada, it was very difficult to explain what we were doing, actually, because it's very abstract, no? For somebody who lives in a remote area, some of them never left the mountain. So to talk about a film festival and the objective that is in a small scale, but will show their words in a different environment to people on a different side of the world, was a very abstract concept. But then we had there the chance to go through this kind of together. And after the film screen, then on the next day, they said to me, so now what do we do? No, it was like 2 years after we had first started to work together. Now that it has just begun, no? So for them, it was only the beginning of working together. And this was also interesting in the very beginning, after my first meeting with this Arhuaco leader that I've mentioned before. I think it took about a year before we first started to film. So I approached for the very first time, and then he advised me that I could come to several of those meetings. So the Arhuacos are structured in a very horizontal way, we could say. So they come together every month or every 2 months to talk about things that are related to the community or that are important to the community. And then old people, young people, women, men, everybody comes together and things are discussed. And sometimes this takes 1 day, sometimes it takes 4 days or 5 days or even 10 days, and everybody stays there. And then once it's done, once everything is spoken through, then people go home. And so I attended several of those meetings around the mountain. And sometimes I was there to speak a little bit about myself and about what I was aiming to do. And sometimes it was just about listening. And this took for a long time. And I think it was kind of also a testing and proving if there's something more profound, or if there's a real interest in listening to what they have to say. And because they know very well that we in Occidental societies, we have everything, but we don't have time. No? And so if they make you wait, this is a very simple way of looking into ourselves, no? To see if there's really a deeper interest in working together. So yeah, to answer your questions, I hope we will continue working together, and there is a couple of ideas, and for films, but also for things that are not so related to films. They are very active in coffee production, and on both sides there's interest to see if we could make it happen for them to establish a way of selling coffee in Europe, and by that breaking kind of this chain that colonialism has established, no? That we take raw materials out of countries and enrich ourselves. And I think it would be a interesting way of turning this thing around and see how they could make a benefit out of it.
You have been realizing a lot of films. I saw. Does this film, or was the process and the relation you built with the people, and also the way you still connecting to them, is it different in a way?
It was indeed very special, yeah. And I'm a mountain climber since many years, and I love the mountains, but there has not been a single mountain that has changed my way of looking at mountains as this one, and the Arhuacos as the people who live there. So for them, the summit is a sacred place, and it should never be stepped upon by humankind. And they believe everything is inverse. So the connections that run from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain are, yeah, we could see it as imaginary lines, and they believe it's inverse. So in a way, the most important places for humans are at the bottom of the mountain, and the top of the mountain is kind of the connection to another dimension. And yeah, I have to say that it really changed my way of looking at things, not only on mountains. I think more in a general way of realizing, I think, of how little we actually need to live a good life. I mean, as filmmaker, we kind of depend a little bit on technology, because without a camera, it's not easy to make a film. But apart from this, I was all this summer here in Spain in the mountains and rebuilding an old stone house and living off the water that just runs down from a spring, and living with solar energy. And maybe I wouldn't have done this if I wouldn't have made this film. I don't know. So I do think it really changed my way of looking at things. And also it made clear to me that it's not over the fight for land and for territories. I mean, the Arhuacos made it very clear, and I could see this with my eyes. If they stop fighting for their land, it will be taken away from them. It's as simple as that. And this never stops. They have had big success in defending their land, but if they stop to care about this, or stop to look very precisely on the operations going on around the Sierra Nevada, especially mining operations, it's tremendous to see that. And it's maybe an interesting thing to look at, because the whole world looks on the peace process in Colombia since 2016, when Santos got the Nobel Prize and so on and so forth, and FARC and government made this peace treaty. But there is a downside and a negative effect of the peace treaty, which is that big parts of Colombia, which have been occupied maybe by the guerrilla or by other armed groups, especially by the guerrilla, they are now emptying because the FARC has laid down their arms, in bigger parts at least. And now this parts of the country, there's big interest of mining industries to go there and to exploit them, because it hasn't been possible the last 70 years because it was war zone. And now these places, they're very in the eye of the mining industry, and this same thing happened to the Sierra Nevada. There is a map, and it's in the internet, and you can see this, what's it called, kind of questions from the mining industry, interest from mining industries to go into these areas to the government. And the whole Sierra Nevada is a red spot in Colombia. So there's huge interest to go in there. It's not accepted by the government, but it's a very fine line. And you can see that if it's tough work to do, and it's tough times to come for them.
Well, Alexander, it was really great to still have you. We spent 15 minutes extra to be able to learn also from your experience. Actually, Rafa will be able to share that actually there's a lot of links between the stories you have been telling. Maybe you will be able to watch it later on.
Would be great.
But I'm afraid that now I have to give the word to Tamara as we're running out of time. Tamara, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful having you all. I wish to thank you once again, all the participants, and especially, of course, Jorijn, Rafa, and you, Alexander, for taking the time and dedicate your time to our festival and to raise awareness on the emergencies and on the lives of these indigenous cultures. But I think that also, raising awareness of the many emergencies we face on everyday life in all our cultures, and it's been wonderful, a wonderful opportunity to share the inspiring ideas you just presented. That will be all. We have been recording this talk, so it will be available on our website at etnofilm.com, so you can watch it from the beginning. And I want to thank you all once again and all the participants, and invite you to keep in touch and to share your beautiful films with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.